to hear about where we're going and how fitting on the 150th anniversary of Henry Ford's birthday that we get to hear from Bill Ford, the chairman of our board and of course the great-grandson of Henry, and hear where he thinks the future of the company is headed. So with that, I'd like to introduce Bill Ford.
Well, good morning, everybody, and thank you for joining us. I understand you were with Alan last night over at the museum, which, for obvious reasons, is one of my favorite places. And it's something that my great-grandfather founded in 1929, which was really a testament to his best friend, Thomas Edison. And if you think of the innovation that took place during that era, it was really quite amazing. I don't know if any of you saw the photos, but there was a group every year that took a camping trip. It was Thomas Edison, Henry Ford, my other great-grandfather, who was Harvey Firestone, and the naturalist John Burroughs. And the four of them they called themselves the Vagabonds, and they would take trips around the world, well, usually just around North America. They'd go to northern Canada and throughout the US every year, and they'd sit around in the evening and they'd discuss the latest innovations. And I remember when my grandmother, before she died, went to one of those events. Usually they didn't allow the wives to come along, but she went. And she said it was quite amazing because Edison had strung portable lights up among the tents as he invented a generator to do that. So she was with the guide on that event, and they were up in northern Maine, and she pulled into the general store with the guide. And the guy looked out the window, and the proprietor of the general store looked out the window and said to the guide, "I think I recognize those people." And the guide said, "Yeah, that's Harvey Firestone, that's Henry Ford, that's President Coolidge, that's Thomas Edison." And so the fellow who ran the general store turned to the guide and said, "Yeah, right, and who are you, Jesus Christ?" But you think of the innovation that took place back then, and it was just incredible. Many years later, my great-grandfather was talking about the early days of Ford Motor Company, and he said, if I'd asked my customers back then what they wanted, they would have said a faster horse. And so you think of really the ultimate disruptive industry. Back at around when Ford Motor Company in 1903 was founded, it really was the ultimate disruptive industry, and with just tremendous innovation taking place. But that rate slowed dramatically over the years, and it really wasn't until 2006 when I first interviewed Alan Mullally and asked Alan to join us. We were sitting in my house in Ann Arbor, and we were talking about the restructuring that was going to have to take place. And I said to Alan, there's no point in us going through all the pain that we're going to have to go through as a company if there isn't light at the end of the tunnel. And so we started talking about how we would completely reinvent the Ford Motor Company. And we decided that we would, right there on the spot, that first day, we decided that we would stand for two things as a company. Two things that Ford had really never stood for, at least in modern times. One was that we wanted to be the fuel economy leader. And that sounded ridiculous because the number one reason that customers rejected Ford back then was fuel economy. So one of the things that I talked to Alan about is how can we take our biggest weakness and turn it into our biggest strength? And the other was being a leader in technology. And really, to deliver the first one, we probably had to be the second. But it wasn't just powertrain technology. It was also infotainment and safety, and really, technology in its broadest sense. And it didn't mean that we had to be the inventor of that technology, although in some cases we might be. But we had to be a very quick implementer of the technology in a way that our customers really valued. So we set down that road, which really required a level of innovation and, frankly, acceptance of innovation that our company hadn't seen in many, many years. And to me, that was wonderful for a lot of reasons. Many of you may know that, I've considered myself an environmentalist really my whole life and really fought this industry for many years on environmental issues. And really, if you think back to the early days of environmentalism as it pertained to the auto industry, it was a fairly hopeless proposition because the technology wasn't there to deliver everything that people wanted. If you wanted to be a green driver, you had to give up things. You had to give up horsepower, you had to give up often air conditioning, power windows, all those kinds of things that people in the end really didn't want to give up. And it wasn't until technology started to progress that you really could deliver both environmentally responsible driving and also the other creature comforts that people have come to look for. So as we look forward now, and where's the future going to take us? Well, we could talk about anything you'd like to talk about, because what I really like to do is have some dialogue with all of you rather than a monologue. But just a few thoughts. So we are well on our way towards cleaner powertrains, and whether it's cleaner internal combustion engines, hybrids, plug-ins, EVs, biofuels, still working hard on hydrogen. And so, it's really interesting the path that we're on in terms of cleaner propulsion systems, either cleaner fuels or cleaner technology in the vehicle itself. And you may have touched on this last night with Alan, but I believe that without a national energy policy, we're not going to optimize any one of those. It's going to remain fragmented, which isn't the best outcome for our country and frankly for our industry. And we can get into that later if you'd like. And also, I gave a TED talk a couple years ago about another big issue coming at us called global gridlock, and the kind of ways that we're going to have to deal with that as a mobility provider. So, just very simply, we're going to go from about 7 billion people on the planet today to about 9 billion by mid-century. During that same era, we're also going to be urbanizing, so more and more people moving to cities. And if you travel around the world today, you already know that in major cities around the world, that getting from point A to point B is really potentially a nightmare. And so we need to get our arms around this issue and figure out how we're going to provide mobility to individuals living in an ever more crowded world. And that's something, and there are a lot of interesting technologies that are taking place to enable that. There is no one silver bullet, and frankly, we're very early days along this journey. But things like vehicle-to-vehicle communication, vehicle-to-infrastructure communication, lots of autonomous driving features before we get to ultimate autonomous driving. All those things are going to be enablers to allow us to provide mobility, particularly in urban areas, but not exclusively in urban areas, to people in an ever more crowded world. And that's something I'm spending a lot of my time on. And it's going to require not only a lot of technological innovation, but frankly, a level of coordination among city planners, because every city starts with a different set of assets in terms of transportation around the world. So a solution that works in London may not work in Mumbai, and Mumbai may have a very different solution than New York City. But a lot of the technologies that will enable solutions will be common across the globe. And ultimately, everything's going to have to be in a single system, all speaking to each other, whether it's bicycles, subways, taxis, pedestrians, private cars. Everything's going to have to be in a single network to optimize transportation in major urban areas. So to me, it's an incredibly exciting thing to be working on because, again, if you think of the level of innovation that's going to be required to deliver that, I think it's wonderful because it will keep our company and, frankly, our industry really at the forefront of technology. And I'm on the board of eBay, and one of the reasons I enjoy it so much is it takes me to Silicon Valley on a very frequent cadence. And when I'm out there, I make a point of getting out and seeing a lot of new companies, meeting with innovators, meeting with venture capitalists, and I love the rate of innovation that's taking place. It used to be that the auto industry wasn't even on the radar screen of Silicon Valley. Now we are very much on the radar screen, and it's not just startups like Tesla and Fisker and Coda and those kind of OEMs, although those are emblematic as well. But also a lot of the technology that was initially being developed for other industries and other applications now are starting to find their way into the vehicle. So this is an incredibly exciting time. The rate of innovation is something that I haven't seen in my working lifetime before. I'm very energized by it. And again, we Ford, and I don't think any individual company needs to be the inventor of all the innovation. But what we have to be is very nimble customers and be really aware of what's out there, who's being disruptive, and how can we incorporate that into our company. So with that, I'd like to stop there and kind of open it up to anything that might be on your minds. Yes? I don't know if there are microphones or not, but, oh wait, there is one here, and then I'll get to you. Yes?
Tanya?
Good morning.
Good morning, I'm Evan from Keynote. I would love to just hear a little bit about your personal interest in design, how design is one of the key components for Ford moving forward.
Design has a lot of elements because we used to think about design just as pretty sheet metal. And believe me, there's still a place for that because I think a beautifully executed vehicle, exterior and interior, still gets your heart thumping. So, I don't discount that at all, but that used to be our definition of design. But now we are taking it, really several steps further because as we think about becoming more fuel efficient, obviously design plays a big role in that. Different materials used in design, both lightweighting of materials, but also importantly, biodegradable materials, recyclable materials, materials made of recycled material, all those kinds of things now are going in. And then you've got smart design. So cars that can, monitor your health. You can check your blood sugar, check your blood pressure. Cars that can tell you whether you're getting, sleepy or not. Cars that can tell you whether you've had too much driving. I mean, all that is design incorporation. And the challenge for us really as automakers is how do we incorporate a lot of this design in a way that is useful to the customer? Because, as you know, we have a huge array of customers, ranging from the very youngest, first-time new car buyer, who are very tech savvy typically, all the way to people on their last vehicle who often just want to be able to turn on the radio and the heat. And so, our challenge is how we can thoughtfully incorporate all those types of really interesting design issues into a car to make people's lives easier. And I think what that'll really mean is we'll have a number of opt-in, opt-out features for our cars so people can take as much of the new and interesting stuff that we do and incorporate that into their driving experience or not. So when I think of design, it's become really all-encompassing. And it's not just how we bend the sheet metal and how we stitch the seats. Although, as I say, for someone who loves really great, sexy, hot cars, that will always remain an important part of what we do. Yes, it was right over here was next.
Good morning, Eric Gilbach, Environet.com.
Good morning.
Last year I got to ask you your definition of sustainability, and based upon what you just answered as well, I'm wondering if you can offer thoughts with respect to batteries and electrification and the life cycle of the battery. There's obviously a timeline for the lifespan to be viable in the car. I attended an event with GM recently where they're now experimenting with taking volt batteries at the end of their viability with the car, stacking them into a housing unit with ABB, and now forming, in California, they actually have generators now where they can back up power using. I'm wondering if you could maybe offer your sort of thoughts on that and whether that's an initiative that Ford is considering as well, working in there.
That's really interesting, and we are doing a lot of research into batteries at end of life, and have really since we started down this road. And if you remember, even as far back as the founding of Better Place, the whole notion behind that was that the old batteries would then go to utilities and be used, as backup power in utilities. So a lot of this, thinking in terms of, how we incorporate batteries at end of life back to the utilities is something that we've been working on, others have been working on for some time. And we're going to continue to do that because we really do need to find ways to extend the life of the batteries, even as we continue to work on ways to have more efficient and longer-lived batteries. So that, yes, that's something that we're very tuned into, something that we are playing a role in. It's interesting, you think about batteries. I had the first electric Ranger, I don't know how many years ago that was, with the lead-acid batteries. It took up pretty much the whole pickup bed. But, batteries have been remarkably resistant to change over the years. You think, at first blush, you think batteries are relatively prosaic items, and that they shouldn't be that difficult to crack the code. But, we've gone through different chemistries on batteries. We've had lead-acid, and then nickel metal hydride, and now lithium, and on and on. And it's amazing to me how much money and how much intellectual capital have been poured at batteries, not just by companies, but frankly by nations over the last 20 years, with incremental improvements, but no huge breakthroughs. So, I guess that's the path we're going to be on, is just a tough slog on batteries getting better and better. Rather than calling, whoever has the mic, just stand up, because there are a lot of hands up. Thank you, because otherwise.
Could you elaborate on the batteries a little bit? The lithium-ion batteries have literally come down 50% in the last 5 years in cost, and analysts are projecting another 75% over the next 5 to 10 years. Do you view yourselves as kind of a price taker in that, waiting for the technology to get cheap enough to deliver the vehicle you want, or do you view yourselves as driving the costs out, and if so, how do you play in that?
Well, both. I mean, that's a good question. The answer to that is both, because it's some, as you point out, at some level, we are a receiver of the technology and of the pricing of the technology. So, but on the other hand, we really want to push this technology hard because we think it's a good one. But my fear beyond the cost of batteries, that's a very valid one. But we will come down the cost curve, as we start coming up the quantity curve. But the issue to me is how are we going to get broad adoption of this new technology without an energy policy? Because I believe that our national infrastructure can withstand about 1 tera. And so if we really do want to drive widespread adoption of EVs, then we've got to get ubiquity of plugging as a nation, not just in people's houses, but at the shopping centers, at the restaurants, at places of work, anywhere people stop for any length of time. And so to do that, we're also going to have a national discussion about how we're going to fire our power plants. Because are we going to build more coal-fired plants? Well, if that's the case, have we really gained on the CO2 equation? And if that's not the case, then what form are we going to use to power our power plants? And we got to get going with it, though, because my fear is we're going to be here with the hardware, regardless of the cost, although cost is obviously important. But until people feel comfortable that they can have ubiquity of plug-in and that the range anxiety that pure EVs evoke can dissipate. Because, one of the things that we could talk about, of course, is quick charging. And quick charging is great, but if you can only quick charge at home, it still doesn't eliminate the range anxiety. And you've got to be able to plug in, wherever you stop. And so I really think that if we're going to optimize this technology, and I would like us to, we got to get on with it as a country. And the purists would say, well, as a nation, we shouldn't be picking winners and losers. Let the market decide. The problem is, I don't think the market will decide. It will remain fragmented, and we'll have, because if we were having this discussion 3 or 4 years ago, we would have been talking about cellulosic ethanol probably as the way of the future. And if it was a few years before that, it would have been hydrogen. But infrastructure is really never developed, and my fear on EVs is unless we really develop the infrastructure, they won't reach their full potential, regardless of the cost of the battery. Oh, sorry, yes.
Hi, good morning. we agree on significant news. How do you see Ford without Alan Mulally? And when female CEO for Ford?
Without Alan, well, Alan obviously has been great, and he's done a wonderful job, needless to say, and he's also been a pleasure to work with for me. I mean, one of the great benefits that I've had is that Alan and I get along so well, and our styles are so similar. Our offices are right next to each other. We kind of run back and forth, and it's a very easy relationship, and it's also the fact that we see the future, virtually the same, has also made the working relationship easy. In fact, the very first day I interviewed Alan, I referenced that a minute ago. By the end of the first hour, we were completing each other's sentences. And so that's a kind of relationship that doesn't come along very often in business, and it's one that I will miss personally. But I think any great CEO also develops a great team, and so one of the things I feel really good about is the team that we have in place. In fact, this is the most talented team that we've had at Ford certainly in my working lifetime. And so, when the time comes for Alan to transition, I'm very confident that we have the people and the processes in place to carry on and to continue to improve our company. And ultimately, when we have a female CEO, that would be great. And we have a number of high potential females who are doing very well at Ford, and certainly it could and should happen. Yes, cool.
First of all, thanks for your time this morning.
Oh, sure.
I appreciate it. You and Alan both last night have been very careful in how you refer and call Ford. He mentioned how when he came, he called it when Ford was a car company. He joked about being at CES and saying how someone called him a mobility company for what they're doing for mobile technology. You mentioned a minute ago, you joked about how you're a mobility provider.
Right.
So as Ford keeps transforming, what do you see this company providing? Are you a consumer brand? Are you a technology company? What is it?
Well, really, we're a customer-focused company. I believe any company's mission is to make people's lives better. Because if you're not doing that, then you probably shouldn't exist. And if I look back at what that meant before, prior to the Model T, most people never travel more than 25 miles from home in their entire lifetime, which is incredible. So the Model T really freed people up to choose where they lived, where they worked, where they played. So in that respect, we certainly made people's lives better. And then we developed police cars and ambulances and fire trucks. We became the arsenal of democracy during World War II. We provided individual mobility to people all around the globe, in addition to building hospitals and sewer systems and schools, again around the globe, all about making people's lives better. So when I think about what does that mean for Ford going forward, I always keep that very much in perspective. How are we going to make people's lives better and easier? And so as a mobility company, and I believe that's exactly what we are, we will incorporate, to use your other examples, we will incorporate technology to enable that. We will incorporate, all the latest electronics to enable that. But ultimately, our goal has to be to improve people's lives. And if you can go back just a minute ago to what I was talking about crowded cities. Look, if we don't get this right, this isn't just an inconvenience, it becomes a human rights issue if people can't deliver healthcare and food in major urban areas around the world. But turn that around. If through technology and careful planning, we can free people up to move, then yes, we will make people's lives better once again. And so what does that mean? What will we be making? Who knows? Already, you're starting to see the lines, here in 2013, blurred between your handheld devices, now coming into your car, and all the things that you have available, potentially, through the web and through the cloud, starting to become available in your car. Well, that will continue to progress as we go forward. And as I said, we'll have autonomous features into our car, and then maybe someday ultimate autonomous driving. But before we even get to that endpoint, you'll see a lot of those features starting to be incorporated into the vehicle, which will clearly change the nature of the driving experience. So, one thing that I think we can't lock ourselves into is a static definition of what we are. That happened to us as an industry, and it certainly happened to us as a company through the 50s, 60s, 70s, but particularly through the 90s and the 2000s. We defined ourselves as a car and truck manufacturer, full stop. Well, that isn't always what our customer needed that, but they needed more. And so now I believe we're delivering more. And if we can always look at everything through the lens of making people's lives better, then I think that will allow us to be nimble, quick, and to continue to reinterpret what that might mean for us. You mentioned, are we a brand? Yeah, we're a very strong brand. It's hard to think of a brand that is as well known around the world as the Ford Oval. And speaking of brands, one of the things that I'm really proud of is there was just some info that we got last week where I think it's Interbrand does a survey of the world's greenest brands and of all brands, but it's not just automotive brands, and of all brands out there, we finished second. And that I think is certainly a big departure from where you would have seen us even 5-6 years ago. Yes.
Next question.
Yeah, John Baptiste with Tech Pulse 360 in San Francisco. Silicon Valley is often called the next Detroit, and where we have autonomous driving, car sharing, connected cars, all electric cars. So how is Ford engaging with Silicon Valley? Is Silicon Valley friends or foe?
Very much so. It's interesting. I wouldn't say Silicon Valley is the next Detroit. I'd say, we are really, the lines will become blurred as we go forward. You mentioned, so first of all, you mentioned car sharing. It was interesting, about 4 years ago, I was at a green conference with the founder of Zipcar, Scott Griffith, where Scott was their first CEO, and I, this is early days on Zipcar, and I'd never heard of Zipcar. So as soon as he finished speaking, I grabbed him and I said, I love your concept. I want to talk to you about how we can work together. So what that led to was Ford and Zipcar going together on 287 college campuses with focuses and escapes. And so, and you asked whether we're working with existing Silicon Valley companies. Very much so. Not only are we working with the big companies that you would recognize, that everyone here would recognize, whether it's the Apples or the Googles or Microsoft, which isn't technically Silicon Valley, but still of that mindset. But also, we're working with startups and we're working with app developers to enable our products to be relevant in our customers' daily life. So, if you go back to what I said a minute ago about us being a very nimble adopter of technology, part of that means being a really good customer, and that doesn't mean dictating to the technology companies or anywhere else that this is what we are, this is what you must do. It's really about us being open-minded, relatively agnostic about technology, willing to be disrupted as new technology comes on stream. And then thoughtfully incorporate it in a way that, again, makes our customers' lives better. So I think it's a really interesting partnership we have going with Silicon Valley. I actually started my own venture capital fund because I was so energized by where the world of mobility is going. And a lot of the companies that I invest in are too small to be on Ford's radar screen or too kind of tangential. But I do think that, and innovation isn't just happening in the Valley, frankly. It's happening all around the world. I mean, it's happening, as you probably know, I think there's more startup activity in Shanghai right now than there is in Silicon Valley. So, startups are happening everywhere. They're happening here in Michigan, around Ann Arbor. In Detroit, there's a lot of startup activity. So, our role is to be receptive to these innovators, and in some cases these disruptors. And rather than be frightened by it, find ways we can embrace it and work with it. I mean, because going back to car share, you know, when I first brought this back, you know, I had a couple comments within the company saying, wait a minute, you want to work with a company who's trying to take vehicles off the road? And I said, absolutely, because this is going to happen with or without us. And to me, it's a really interesting concept, and I'd like to find a way to work with them. And so, and then one of the things that using the Zipcar model just a little bit further, they found out that when people left Zipcar, they were heavily influenced when they bought a car by their Zipcar experience. So again, if we figure we can work with Zipcar, they can have a great Zipcar experience, and if and when they decide to buy a car, hopefully it will be on their radar screen. So I think that that the more we can embrace new concepts, new ideas, and new inventions, the better we are going to be, and the better our customers are going to be, as long as we don't confuse them and overwhelm them with too much stuff. So I'm getting the hook here. So, but thank you all, and I really hope you have a great time here. I think your agenda is going to be really fun and really interesting, and I hope you get a sense that Ford, we're looking at the world in a way that you maybe wouldn't expect a traditional automaker to look at the world. We're going to look at issues that are issues that perhaps we wouldn't have been talking to you about 5 years ago, and a lot of it's due to Cheryl and her great work. So thank you all so much, and look forward to meeting you. Thanks.